All right. Good afternoon, everybody. And wow, that was really good. I like I was jamming there to the music. Great intro. Great intro. So I want to welcome everybody on behalf of SHFM to our first virtual local event, Accelerating the Pace of Change. I'm Robert Gordon, SHFM's president. As everyone is still joining this session, I want to mention a few housekeeping items. Please ask questions along the way, and during the Q&A portion, use the chat window that you'll see in your toolbar. We are keeping everyone on mute for now, just to keep the background noise to a minimum. In the second half of the session, we'll be breaking out into rooms based on market segments. So just fair warning now to be camera ready for the second part. More on that later in the session. And lastly, the first half of this session is being recorded. So it'll be played on demand. It'll be available later in the week on SHFM's website and the YouTube channel. I do want to say a special thank you to our SHFM annual sponsors, the group of people that make virtual events like this one possible. They have stood by us during this challenging year, and we're so grateful. Today's SHFM educational programming was developed by your peers. I'd like to say thank you to the local planning committee and a big thank you to the local committee chairs from each market for their planning and tremendous work on this session. And now, it is my pleasure to introduce to you SHFM's National Local Committee Chair, and I'm very proud to say incoming member of the SHFM Board of Directors, Bob Klockner with Vivaro Advanced Water Systems. Over to you, Bob.
Thank you, Rob. We're excited to share this unique virtual event with you today. While SHFM maintains a strong national presence, the heart of the society lies in the geographic regions, or specifically the locals. This year, SHFM is pleased to offer the first virtual SHFM local event. I'm delighted to welcome back Susie Weintraub, Chief Executive Officer, Envision Group, which is the division of Compass Group, as we continue the dialogue with her from SHFM Critical Issues Conference. We're also pleased to be joined by guest speakers, which I'm going to let Susie highlight. So Susie, over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Bob. And it's great to be here again. As Bob mentioned, I was with you guys back in May and kind of picking up and continuing the conversation that Rob, Bob, Tony, Ricky Post had reached out to me probably about a couple months ago and said, hey, would you be willing to, kind of continue it? And I said, I'd love to. We love talking about this stuff, but I think maybe if I had our Chief Technology Officer of Compass Digital Labs, Scott Wu, join us, and we kind of flip the format a bit and have Laura Moore, who is our communications director for Envision Group of Compass, that it might be a bit more interactive and engaging. So that's the format that we've chosen to spend with you guys for the next 25 minutes or so. And so thanks again for having us. And Laura, I'll flip it over to you.
Thank you, Susie, and hi, everyone. We're so excited about this conversation as we explore together how the hospitality industry is accelerating the pace of change. So I am calling in from my home in Charlotte, so a little shout out to the local chapter here. Susie's in Seattle and Scott is in Toronto, so we've got the bases covered. And as much as 2020 has been filled with challenges and setbacks and too many cases of heartbreak, it's also been charged with opportunity for reinvention and fast-tracking solutions that really are going to have a transformational impact on how we order, how we serve, and how we gather for food. So to get us started, Scott and Susie, I think it would be really interesting if each of you chose one word, how you would describe the future of on-site food service, and then tell us all why you chose it. So Susie, let's start with you.
Thanks, Laura. And I think it's a great kickoff question. For me, well, there are a number of words that I could use to describe the situation we're going through today, but I think the word regeneration is something that I've chosen to really, try and stay on the side of optimism and think of this as a time to rethink the opportunities that we have based upon the situation that we're in today. It honestly, it wasn't my term. I've been connected with a guy by the name of Mark Rampolla, who was the founder of Zico Coconut Water. Currently today is the founder of Power Plant Ventures. And he and I were talking probably in March or April, and we were talking specifically about regenerative agriculture, but he kind of brought he's like, it could be bigger than that. It's really about regeneration of a lot of things. And I'm like, you know what, that's spot on. I do think that as we are working our way through this situation, and even since I talked to you guys in May, that the whole concept of regeneration really does say it all in one word. It's an opportunity for us to rethink, to kind of give birth to new concepts that are going to take us into the future. I know that technically that term is probably something that's, the connotation is more biology and chemistry, but I certainly do think it sums up our future state pretty succinctly. So that's my one word.
And you stuck with the positive approach, so that's good too. All right, Scott, how about you?
I was going to say wine, but that's my personal word.
Also
word,
positive.
The word I would, I guess, use is leapfrogging or leapfrog. I feel what the pandemic is doing for us right now is it's really forcing us to accelerate what we're doing, and we'll talk a little bit about that more during the session. But through digital, it's forcing a lot of our businesses. Like at the end of the pandemic, I think a lot of our businesses is going to be a lot further ahead than where we were when we started. And I also think we're even being forced to look at new business models as well. So I definitely think leapfrog is a good way to see how we can get through this pandemic.
I agree. Okay, so with those words in mind, so regeneration and leapfrog, we're going to spend the next 20 minutes or so really exploring the now, the near, and the far when it comes to creating extraordinary hospitality experiences within today's environment. So I have prepared a few questions, but of course we want to get to the Q&A. So please submit any questions that you have in the chat session. And it probably makes the most sense to start with the now. So what do you see emerging today that is really quickly becoming really a part of what we now know as the new normal? Scott, do you want to start?
Sure. So interestingly, what we're seeing today wasn't that different from what we saw before the pandemic, but what's changed is it's really accelerated what we were seeing. So for example, before the pandemic, obviously in food service, it's really about the experience in our physical locations, in our cafes. We were introducing new channels for our customers to interact with us and engage with us over the past few years. So for example, mobile ordering and pickup, mobile ordering and delivery. These were all things that we were doing before, but what we've seen during the pandemic is it's accelerated the speed by 10x basically. We've seen the volume increase by 10x, and we've actually seen the time that we're allowed to deploy this, decrease. So we had to do it faster, right? Because at a lot of these businesses, without these e-commerce channels, there's no way for the consumers to actually do business with us. So it definitely has brought in a different pace. Internally, we call it the digital tsunami. Tsunami might be a negative term, but the way we see it is like, how do we surf this big wave really and drive this transformation in the food service business, and really move us way more digital, right? We used to use the term O2O internally. That means online to offline, because the online channels were really important for our business, but the focus was really how do we leverage the online channels to drive our consumers to a great offline experience, because that's really our focus. But what we're seeing now is that like traditional retailers, we're now becoming an omni-channel business, right? So physical is actually, during the pandemic, physical is not even as big. The digital channels now are our biggest channels really right now in terms of driving business. But obviously when business, post-pandemic, people aren't going to leave these e-commerce channels, these mobile channels, right? Web ordering, like omni-channel is going to become a reality for us. And that reality means a lot of things. First, our business wasn't built this way. We were very much a physical experience type of business. And so now, how do we arm our business with the right tools or the right solutions, and actually with the right skill set through training to really move them into this new digital world? Another piece that's definitely accelerated for us is frictionless retail. So We were focused on frictionless before. This is like the Amazon Go experience. You walk into one of our micro market areas, you check in with the mobile app. As soon as you check in, you can just grab all the products. There are cameras watching, and the camera's tracking the items that you pick up. And then once you pick up the items, you can just leave, and it will charge your, the charge will come through your mobile app. We were very focused on this in the past because we believe, it removes a friction point for a consumer. This is driving more convenience for them. With the pandemic now, this is actually a safety thing. It helps with social distancing. People aren't lining up together to pay. So it's still about convenience, but it's also, there's a safety to it, right? So we launched 3 locations this past year. The biggest one we launched was at University of Houston. And, on the slide here, you can see some of the articles from VentureBeat and Sunday Times that wrote about it. But this is becoming a really big area for us. And then a new area, I guess, that we're really looking at right now is, delivery is obviously very big through Uber Eats and DoorDash. They call that the last mile delivery, but for food services, it's the last meter delivery. Like, how do you deliver food, through different floors to different buildings? But because of the pandemic, drop-off catering is becoming a big deal. To make delivery economical, talk about a new business model, like you probably have to do group drop-off, group orders to make the delivery economical. So drop-off catering is becoming a big deal. Looking at ghost kitchen. And so these are some of the areas that we're really looking at. And, recently we actually just made an investment in eClub because we really believe, ghost kitchen and drop-off delivery is going to be a big focus for us moving forward.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Scott, I think, all of the points, obviously, we work hand in hand with you guys, so we're well connected. But, I think as we look at how the business model is evolving, and we really needed to, kind of challenge our thinking around the existing business model and look at it from a scalability perspective, from a flexibility perspective. Is it really giving consumers, what they want, when they want, where they want it, and how they want to pay for it today? And quite frankly, I think we were finding, because to your point, we were so reliant on our physical spaces, that we weren't hitting that demand, and we needed to, the word of the year, pivot quickly and figure out how we could deliver solutions that from a consumer perspective really enabled them to control the end-to-end food experience. And a lot of that control, the engine behind that, was mobile and digital. So I think we, really thought about not only the digital piece, but also, as a consumer, I don't want to make 3 different stops on my way home, or, I want to be able to go to one place and have more of that. If I'm going to be picking up my lunch, can I also pick up my pantry items, my home essentials, and really looking at more of that grocerant model where it's a blend between a cafe or a restaurant and a grocery store. So I think, looking at how we were viewing the on-site space from a user experience perspective was one piece of it. But then also we had to make sure that we were looking at it from the operator side, to your point. So it could be, still not only a value proposition from the consumer and client side, but also, how can we make it work as an operator? And I think that's where we came back to really, how do we address the scalability of both the physical space? How do we address the scalability of labor aligned with the population? So, how do we kind of shrink everything? And then also the menu, looking at the menu. And we really saw an opportunity to, kind of really hit pause a little bit and look at opportunities to streamline our menus and put up partition walls in a big cafe to kind of shrink the space so it doesn't feel so empty. But also the big piece of it is taking those digital platforms and pushing all of the transactions through digital platforms so that we address less density in the spaces, we enable remote pickup, and kind of all of those aspects from the consumer perspective that they're looking for us to deliver today.
All right, so whether it's a mobile ordering app or really an entire portfolio of integrated points of service, let's talk about that digital tsunami that Scott referenced. And how has the increase in demand really impacted the amount of time it takes to implement these technology solutions? I mean, talk about accelerating the pace of change, right, Scott?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of it's working with you all, like, as Susie talked about, the business, we looked at menus. Pre-pandemic, one of the things that our chefs are really proud of is, it's different menus, it's, the ability to customize our meals. But anytime you do any customization, it's hard to scale because it means it's different everywhere, right? So one of the big things that, we've done that the business has done is really about standardizing menus during the pandemic. Through this standard menu, it really made it easier for us to deploy these digital solutions because, it's deploying, not 1,000 different menus, but it's deploying maybe, tens or 20 different types of menus, right? So that's one. The other one was, before, it's just a little bit about our business on the digital side had to mature a lot faster too. So I would say in 2019, we did a lot of our deployments by sending people out there. We'll send a field technician out to deploy, a kiosk or point of sale system or all the kitchen display system you need for the mobile app system. But because of the pandemic, we can't travel, and because of the volume too, we had to build a lot of tools that automate and that can do remote installation. So it's really like the Apple model, right? Like it's in Apple, they build a beautiful box and they ship the product to you. Our boxes aren't as beautiful as Apple's, but what we had to do is ship a lot of our products and technology to the account or to the unit. And then it was a lot of self-serve on their part, and we will remotely walk them through installation, and we will remotely set up their menus. So a lot of things were done remotely. So talking about the tsunami wave, like we had to do it because the volume was so big and we had to do it so fast. But post-pandemic, we'll still be doing this, so we're actually more efficient because of the pandemic afterwards, right?
And I think from, just adding to that, from my perspective, it kind of goes back to a phrase that was actually, we were working on pre-pandemic, which was, it's all about, yes, thinking big and wanting to create a lot of impact, but acting small and starting with one, as opposed to, it being an overwhelming ask. Taking ownership, which has always kind of been part of what we do and how we think about, moving into the future. And then lastly, scaling fast or scaling or failing fast, one of the two. I mean, it was really, it's kind of one of those things that when you talk about acceleration, again, think big, start small, take ownership, scale or fail fast it's kind of the way we frame some of these new opportunities. And I think, one of the keys to it, when we talk about ownership, I think we found that it's great to collaborate, and, all of the platforms that we're able to virtually collaborate on, 100% is what we have to do today, but we still need kind of one driver of the car, right? We need one person to own a certain initiative or a certain project to make sure that it kind of stays on the road and continues to move forward in the right direction. So I think, when we practically think about how we continue to accelerate innovation, it really ties back to some of those principles.
All right, driving the car, and something that impacts really the now, the near, and the far is sustainability. And that's a topic we're all passionate about, and everyone in the SHFM family has a huge impact on. And it seems like, logically it's taken a bit of a backseat, right, when we were in survival mode. But Susie, sustainability now seems to be top of mind again with both clients and consumers. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, 100%. And I think that to your point, Laura, there was, everything kind of went into a pause pattern in March. And we were just trying to figure out, okay, how do we just get through this? And all of the things that were not must-haves kind of went onto the back burner. But we have had a lot of conversations with clients over the past few months saying we got to get back on track with this. because it really does, when you think, and I talked a little bit about this in May, the interconnectedness of the food system with the well-being of people, the welfare of animals, and the well-being of planet. You really can't argue with it. And I think that now is an opportunity, for us to really take a step back, relook at some of those things that we were talking about pre-pandemic, single-use plastics, food waste, and regenerative agriculture, restorative agriculture, kind of bringing it all back. And also, when we look at some of the statistics like the one on your screen, the good news is that this is not something we need to push. This is what consumers are asking for. They are asking for products. They want to support products that will support their local community and really support a cause that helps our farmers and then ultimately makes our planet more resilient to climate change. So, some of these statistics, and again, these are through Data Essentials and a lot of our different contacts. We didn't make these up. It's not surveys that we've done internally. But to me, that speaks volumes. And I think it really does showcase how, yes, it may be, sustainability did have to go into a little bit of a holding pattern, but I think it's going to really resurge in a very positive way, in a very big way, in the next 6-9 months as we see things kind of come back to the state of new normal.
Very positive. That's wonderful to hear. And so let's now take a moment to forecast the far. Not easy to do, but as we really continue to adapt to today's environment, reimagining, reinventing, rethinking how we operate, are there any revolutionary innovations, Scott and Susie, that you see on the horizon that you can predict will be more common maybe in a few years? Scott, do you want to start with this one?
Sure. So I think there's two. One is that I haven't seen it yet, but I think, if you look at the food service and our kitchen, we're always introducing more technology solutions, right? So at some point, there's gonna be like 10, 20, 30 different solutions there. And so I think there's an opportunity for somebody to come in with like the next iPhone for the kitchen, right? How do you create this one operating system or one device where everyone knows how to, it's a familiar user experience, it's familiar training that everyone can in the kitchen they can get used to, versus today where anytime we introduce something, it's like a net new experience for them, and it's actually very difficult for them to manage. So I think there's definitely an opportunity there to build some sort of operating system for the kitchen. And then the second area, I think it's just not just in the food space, but computer vision is becoming very prominent for us, right? Like we all hear about self-driving cars. That's leveraging computer vision and AI. We just talked about self-checkout or frictionless experience. That's using computer vision. Eventually, the inventory in our pantries would be done through computer vision. Observing how consumers behave and why did they not pick something up at a specific shelf and they did it somewhere else. That's that's going to be insight through computer vision. So I think in general, just AI and how we leverage computer vision. Obviously, there's a lot of privacy and data issues that we have to resolve. But I think that would be, I don't want to say game changing, but that will have huge impact in us in the foreseeable future.
Great. And from my perspective, kind of where we started the conversation on regeneration, I do think that we're going to see a massive acceleration and interest as it relates to regenerative agriculture or restorative agriculture and biodiversity, which again, kind of goes back to better farming practices, I think is the simple way to sum it up. Obviously, a lot more complex than that. But for purposes of today, that's essentially what it is, and what role that we can take as an industry to really help that movement go forward. I truly believe that that's kind of the wave of the future, and collectively and collaboratively, we all have a role to play in how we move that forward. I do think that, fresh, healthy, immunity boosting functional foods are ultimately going to become the norm. That's not going to be something that we're going to have to be talking about. It's just going to be a regular part of what we eat and who we are. And then also, the local communities and building stronger connections within the local communities. So that's kind of, you know, when we talk about the way far out, you know, where we're seeing things, I don't even know that it's that far out. I mean, I think it's probably, you know, we're moving towards that based on the conversations that we're having today.
Control, community, and purpose. And it's amazing that everyone can get that just through food. And that's something that we can all bring to the table. We are just about out of time, so I'm going to try to squeeze in one question that we received from Q&A, but I want to be very conscientious. We only have a minute. Is there any concerns about the increase with digital and technology making us feel more distance from our guests in the hospitality environment? Scott and Susie, do you want to touch on that, about the increase in technology and the impact that has on table touching and hospitality and getting to really know our consumers and what they want?
Susie, do you want to start? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I can take that, because I think, you know, in the long run, again, it's not the ideal environment that we're in today, but I think in the long run, all of this technology will, you know, it will kind of become integrated in the consumer experience, quite frankly, enabling humans to be more connected kind of in the front of house way, and really, you know, continuing to build the interactions with the consumers. So rather than having to spend time, you know, in the office doing all of these things manually, the technology will have accelerated to the point where now we can come out and be more connected as humans with our consumers and with our clients. I mean, that's kind of the way I see it. I don't necessarily, you know, see it taking away from the on-site dining experience. I see it enhancing it, because it's going to create more time for that human-to-human interaction.
Yeah, I agree. I think everything we do digitally has to drive a better experience. So, you know, if you think about it, when, you know, without digital, when someone enters our, you know, physical restaurant or space, that's when the customer journey actually starts, is when they open the door and they enter with us, and their journey ends when they leave us. I think with all these digital channels now, their journey actually starts in the moment they wake up, right? Because they have their mobile phone. We can now have access to them. We can communicate with them. We can market to them. We have a lot more understanding of who they are. Like when people come into our restaurants or our store, like it's a point of sale system, we can only put them into a market segment. I don't know it's Laura. I don't know it's Susie that's shopping with us. I just can say, hey, based on this consumer purchase, this is the type of behavior. So this is how we need to react to them in the future. But I think with all these digital channels now, like, you know, I think Susie and Laura always talk about this personalized experience, personalized nutrition even. I think these channels enable us to provide that type of service to them.
Interesting. We could all talk about, right, all day, but unfortunately it is 4:30 Eastern. So I think that's time we have, and probably need to transition to the breakout. But this was a fascinating conversation.
Great, and thanks, Laura, for your willingness to moderate. Always an amazing job. And Scott, thanks for weighing in, certainly from the technology and digital perspective. We know that that's going to continue to play a major, major role in both our lives and the lives of our clients and consumers. So Bob, I think at this point is when I turn it back to you. I think we are about a minute and a half late, but hopefully we got through a lot of content in a relatively short amount of time, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. And we did exactly what we were aiming to accomplish. So thank you very much, Laura, Susie, and Scott, for an impactful session and all the insights and information you shared with us, along with all the fantastic renderings for different things that are here now and to come in the future.